Welcome to Silberman Law Firm's Weekly Docket, episode 51, where we talk legal news and practical law. Today is January 2nd, 2025, and I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the firm and host, and I'm joined by Austin Black, my co-host. How are you doing today, Mr. Black?
I am doing just fine. Not happy with the Texas weather in the winter being in the 60s again, but what can you do? I'm used to it.
Thank you for being a trooper and joining me for our show, even though it's the day after New Year's. So much appreciated.
I hope I'm 30, Phil. I didn't go out and drink on New Year's Eve or anything like that. I was just sitting at home reading a book. So we're
lively New Year's celebration there.
Lively.
So what's on our docket today, Mr. Black?
So for our legal news section, we actually just have one topic today, and that would be Trump running to the rescue of TikTok from its impending ban by the U.S. government. Okay, which I would have been really excited to see how that actually played out if it had been implemented, because the Chinese government said that they weren't going to allow the sale of certain things. So I don't really know how that would have gone, but it looks like we're not going to find out. Then we'll move on to our legal questions section, which are what we're going to be going over this week are the top Googled legal questions in 2024 and 2023. And then we have a rant and rave section.
No rant and rave section.
There's no ranting and raving today.
No, we're a little light on content because of the holidays.
I think we should rant and rave about that, about being light on content for the holidays. Like, why is that? What do you think?
It's just slow time of year for legal news. So The best we can give our listeners is a little update on the Trump to the rescue. So let's go ahead and kick it off with our one legal news story, which is something we've been following. Just to give our listeners some background, again, in April of 2024, Congress passed a law that gave TikTok 9 months to sell because it's owned by ByteDance. It's a Chinese company. There's some national security issues, and it's really national security versus free speech.
Phil, just on that briefly, this is relevant to it being owned by a Chinese company and free speech issues. So have you heard of the game Marvel Rivals? It's a video game. Have you heard of that?
I've not heard of that.
Have you heard of the game Overwatch?
Okay, again, I'm mostly Gen X here.
Sure.
I'm not a big game guy, but fill me in.
But you haven't heard of the one Overwatch?
No.
I'm surprised by that one, because that one's been around for a long time, and I would have expected one of your kids to mention it or something. Okay. But anyways, Marvel Rivals, the reason I mentioned Overwatch is that it's a newer thing released recently by Disney and NetEase, a Chinese company, to compete with Overwatch, which is like a hero shooter thing, right? Okay. And what's so funny in the game, but I think it's fun. I've played it some. What's so funny in the game is you cannot, if you type free Tibet, it doesn't let you say it. If you type free Taiwan, it doesn't let you say it. If you type, what was the year that Tiananmen Square happened? What year?
I don't know.
If you type the year, just the numbers, Tiananmen Square happened, you cannot type that year.
That's incredible. I think there was a press conference by the Chinese. Who's the president of China? Yeah, Xi Jinping. A press conference where he basically came out here during his New Year's speech or whatever and said that Taiwan will be reunified with China. So it's a matter of time. That's the reason Top Gun was banned. The new one with the old one had Tom Cruise in it as well, but the new one was not shown in China because I think Tom Cruise was wearing some sort of Taiwanese patch or something like that.
Yeah, on his shoulder. He had the Taiwanese Air Force patch or something like that. Yeah.
There's not debatable that there's some free speech issues in China for certain. You know, this is really free speech of corporate free speech of all the users and the creators on TikTok versus national security. Yeah. Now, the appellate court sided with Congress, sided with the law, said absolutely national security outweighs the free speech rights, and TikTok is going to effectively be banned. The Supreme Court decided to take it up for hearing on January 10th. We speculated in a previous show that the Supreme Court is going to basically set precedent, side with the appellate court, say for certain this ban is completely legal. But then along comes President Trump-elect and he has filed an amicus curiae brief with the Supreme Court.
That he wrote himself.
Yes. No, obviously.
Can you imagine what that brief would look like, Phil, if Donald Trump wrote an amicus curiae brief?
Business person, not a lawyer. A lot of presidents have been lawyers, not Donald J. Trump. What tell our listeners what we've got here in the notes, Austin? What's an amicus brief?
An amicus curiae brief, sometimes just called an amicus brief. The Latin term amicus curiae means friend of the court. And it's a document filed with, I think these are only filed in the Supreme Court, right? I don't think these are filed elsewhere.
I don't know the answer to that, but obviously I only see them in the Supreme Court.
You only see them in the Supreme Court. Maybe they can be filed elsewhere. I guess that would make sense. But basically, if there's a matter of interest to a certain organization or person, you can file a supporting brief either in favor of one side or the other, or just bringing up something else that you want the decision maker to consider. And maybe they'll read it, maybe they won't, but you've got it on file and you did something. So
yeah, it's done by a disinterested party. Yeah. The president of the United States is obviously disinterested right there.
Yeah.
Neither plaintiff or defendant, neither appellate or appellee or petitioner, respondent, whatever you want to call them.
That's in the outcome of the case, which is why they're filing it.
Is that what? Okay.
Yeah.
So Donald Trump was totally against TikTok when he was in office. And only recently he came out and said that he now wants to at least delay the ban. And his brief essentially says he opposes banning TikTok, and he wants the ability, this is a quote from the brief, seeks the ability to resolve the issue at hand through political means once he takes office.
Okay.
Trump has very much cozied up to TikTok. Do you have that quote there at that bottom bullet point you can read for us, Austin?
The one about the youth vote? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that one again.
We did talk about this before, I think. Like Trump said this at a press conference earlier in the summer, and I think we touched on it briefly, but he said, quote, "I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok because I won the youth vote. I won the youth by 34 points, which was we did not think that was true in the last podcast. We have confirmed since then that is not true.
Not true. Not true. But he said
Trump just likes TikTok. I think he
likes TikTok.
Using it. Yeah.
And here's a little fact. He met with TikTok's CEO at Mar-a-Lago this past week in Florida. So there's some cozying up going on.
No, I don't think that could be it. I don't think Trump is easily manipulated at all, man. I don't think that if you just compliment Trump and tell him how much you like Mar-a-Lago, he'll just give you whatever you want. I definitely don't think that's the kind of person he is.
Maybe this should be our rant and rave. Trump's brief really has nothing to do with the law. The law is Congress came together, they passed a law, Joe Biden, president, signed the law. You remember the cartoon from when we were kids or whatever. Goes up to the president. Biden signs it. It's a law. This thing needs to stand. A bill. Yeah. A bill comes out of Congress. How a bill becomes
a law. Schoolhouse Rock. Yes.
That's
what I'm with you. Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, I did not remember the cartoon well enough, but this thing needs to stand on its own. Trump doesn't get to come in and say, Supreme Court, you work for me. Do what I say. He appointed most of them, all right, but that's not the way it should work. So I have
guarantee you he thinks that's how it should work.
I've got my eye on this because if the Supreme Court gives him what he wants in his brief, I'm going to be very fearful for the future of our democracy. So I hope that the Supreme Court throws his brief in the trash and lets TikTok be banned. That's what I hope.
Because it has because I've looked at it briefly. It's a brief. I looked at it briefly. And there really is no precedent that is pointed to or anything like that. It's just like, hey, Trump would really like it if he delayed the ban on this. And it doesn't make much sense. So the Supreme Court went with that, whether that's a Democratic president or a Republican president. And we've talked, I think, maybe in a rant or rave section about like about the perception of partiality in the Supreme Court or impartiality of the Supreme Court. And both of us think that, again, as far as people who actually pay attention to the Supreme Court, that perception of impartiality is really not there so much anymore. But if that was to happen, this would be beyond what we've seen so far. It really would.
Well, and there's nothing for him to resolve politically. It's a law. The only way you can resolve this is if you go back to Congress and get a new bill.
Yeah, he's not the lawmaker. If Congress submitted an amicus curiae brief, right?
Yeah.
And they said, if you could delay this until we make something ruling on it, that I think would maybe hold some water, right? Because that's actually the branch of the government that has the authority to do something about it. If Trump tries to do something about it, I think it'd be unconstitutional. And I honestly think him even writing this amicus curiae brief is unconstitutional.
I think he can write the brief. Let's just see. I think for the preservation of our democracy, I hope the Supreme Court gets it. Yeah, maybe they read it.
Gone, Phil. It's already gone. Right? Like, don't you know? Like on November 4th, it was just gone from there.
I hope the Supreme Court affirms the appellate court and TikTok is banned. So does Mark Zuckerberg, or what I like what Donald Trump calls him, though. Does it Donald Trump call him Mark Schmuckerberg or something like that? Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook. That's it for legal news. Now we have to answer some legal questions. These are not super serious legal questions. You always see these top whatever lists, like top searched legal questions of 2024, top Googled questions of 2024. These are not necessarily 2024 specifically. They may have been 2023. These were taken all over the place.
Yeah.
They're just, generally speaking, top searched legal questions. Okay. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it. This is what people want to know. This is what people are out there searching on Google. And by the way, they may not even be searching on Google. They're probably just asking ChatGPT a lot of this stuff right now. But here's what
side note, please don't do that. If you're asking ChatGPT something that you can just Google really easily, don't do that, okay? Because I am not a super environmentally conscious person, but even I know that the amount of resources it expends by sending that to ChatGPT as opposed to Google is crazy.
You're trying to save the environment. Okay, that's a new perspective. Don't use ChatGPT. Save the environment.
For instance, if you send to ChatGPT, what is the weather today? That is stupid, okay? Yeah. You could just use an app or type it on Google. Easy, super easy. Now, if you type in Google, please plan an itinerary for me for a vacation in this place. Now, Google's not really going to be able to do that. That's an appropriate usage of ChatGPT.
You're like the AI energy police.
See, I'm really not. That's what I'm saying. I'm really not. But on that specific thing, I think it's dumb. So yeah.
Okay. All right. I think some of the top searched Googled questions every year is stuff like, "What day is it? What's the weather like?" Stuff
exactly.
Like that. But,
please don't ask ChatGPT that.
Okay. Here it is. All right. So the first one is, what does an indictment, or what is an indictment? Okay. Formal charge or accusation of a serious crime is a short answer. Yeah. What's the process look like? The police come out there, they investigate, they arrest you. Sometimes. Yeah, that's right. You don't have to be arrested to be indicted for certain. Yeah. But there is a grand jury. They impanel a grand jury. In Texas, 12 jurors, and the prosecution makes the argument that, hey, this person did something. Yeah. The grand jury has to find probable cause, and they have to convince 9 of the 12 jurors that there's probable cause. And then it goes to formal charges, and then you're formally charged with a crime, right? Yeah. Not a whole. Do you have anything to add to that?
All accurate. Grand jury different than a petite jury, which is where you actually get convicted of something. Yeah. Indictment is different than conviction. Okay, so just be aware of that. But yeah.
All right, you want to take the next one? What is a prenup?
Sure. It's just a contract. It's a contract made between a couple before they get married, hence prenup, okay? Post-nup would be after you're married, okay?
The nup is short for nuptials.
Yes. The nup is short from nuptials, and usually it has to do with the ownership of respective assets if the marriage should fail. Texas is community property, so typically in Texas, if someone has a prenup, they are going to specify property that is clearly not community and is instead separate upon their divorce. So
you usually see this with older people that are getting married, maybe for the first time, usually the second or third time. Yeah. He or she, I have to remember to say he or she, but let's just pretend it's like 1996 and it's a he and she. Okay. So he has a mature guy, 55 years old, whatever. He has his own income. She's mature. She has her own income. And they're coming to, they love each other. but maybe they're not sure about mixing all the assets at this point. So they usually say, all right, anything you earn during marriage, anything I earn during marriage, that's going to stay as our separate property. Texas is a community property state where the default would be two young people get married, everything they earn is community property, part of the marital estate. Older people get married, they say, okay, what I make is mine. And that's more, they're basically contractually moving their marriage to a separate property situation. That's usually which. Okay. So there's some other reasons for prenuptial agreements. We won't get into those, but that's what it is. All right, this was an interesting one that I thought. Some of these I would not have. Would you have guessed a top searched legal question by the public is it legal to burn money? Would you? I would not have guessed that, but people want to know.
No, I would not have. I don't know why people want to burn money, but apparently they do.
Yeah, and we're not talking about like figuratively or metaphorically, like my wife burns money, Austin. We're talking about
we're going out and buying lottery tickets. Yeah, not that.
Yeah, no. My wife does not buy lottery tickets. She buys
not that you know of.
She's like running outside the house to smoke a pack of cigarettes and going down to
scratch the lottery tickets,
scratching lottery tickets and buying a 40-ounce. Have I mischaracterized people buying lottery tickets? How many people have I offended? But so, is it legal to literally burn money, Austin? Burn currency?
No, it is illegal to burn money. You cannot do it. It's considered mutilation of currency.
Yes, prohibited under federal law.
Yeah, under federal
18 USC section 333, which states that it is illegal to mutilate, cut, deface, disfigure, or perforate or otherwise damage any U.S. currency that renders it unfit for reissue.
Yeah. So I don't see a lot of people actually burning money, right? Like actually physically burning money. Everyone comes across every once in a while that like dollar bill that has like a mustache drawn on the president or something like that. Technically that falls under this too.
Yes,
okay? Illegal.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That brings us to our next question.
Okay.
Is it legal to take sand from a beach? So can you just roll up with a truck? Say you need some sand. Can you go down to Galveston, roll up with a truck and start putting it in the back of the pickup?
No, you cannot do that. You can't do that because there is a act, all right? It's the Dune Protection Act. The Dune Protection Act says that areas where sand can be taken to within 1,000 feet of the mean high tide of the Gulf of Mexico is...
Let me break that down for listeners. Okay, so when you go to the beach and you take the high tide, when it's high tide, the water gets real high up on the beach, okay, and you've got less beach, you just take the average of whatever the high tides are, and then 1,000 feet from that, don't touch the sand. Got it? So just figure out where the high tide, there's a high tide and a low tide.
Yeah, so just make sure if you're going to the beach in Galveston, you bring a ruler with you, okay? Make sure you do that, right? Or you could violate the law.
We're not worried about little kids or whatever, or like families playing in the sand. This was like if you were developing a subdivision on the other side of Stewart Road and you needed some sand, and it was nighttime and you sent the dump trucks across the road and started filling them up. This is where you can't touch the sand. You can't take the sand.
No, we've actually had people contact our firm about this law.
I had no idea.
Where they were doing developments actually in the Galveston area. And like the federal government sent them a notice saying that what they were doing is in violation of this. So obviously something we touch because we don't deal with stuff with the federal government like that. But it was an interesting potential client.
You need a permit. Section 63.091 Dune Protection Act. You need a permit to authorize the conduct. Otherwise, if you don't have a permit, which you're probably not getting it, it's no person may damage, destroy, or remove a sand dune or portion of a sand dune seaward of the dune protection line. Yeah. Okay, there you go. All right. Well, related, being at the beach, you like to be barefoot.
Yes.
Is it legal to drive barefoot in Texas, Austin?
Perfectly legal. Express your freedom. Drive barefoot. Unless you have not showered recently and there's someone else in your car, then please don't drive barefoot. Okay. Actually, you know what? This is a side rant and rave section, okay? People on the plane, on long plane rides, who think it is okay to take off your shoes and socks sometimes on the plane, you need to be thrown off the plane in mid.
Is it okay? Okay, is it okay? Is it okay to take off your shoes but keep your socks on?
It depends on if your socks stink, okay?
Okay.
You should be aware of your olfactory senses, and if you do not have reliable olfactory senses, ask someone who does and act accordingly.
Here's a rule. If you're on a 24-hour plane ride to Nepal,
yes.
Okay, no, everyone is shoes on the whole flight.
Shoes on the whole flight, please.
Okay, all right. Perfectly legal to be barefoot in Texas.
Yes,
okay,
not in the plane.
All right,
do it.
Here's a top search one. Okay, a big search: states where weed is legal. Now, it's gotten so many states now. Marijuana is legal. It's easier to answer this just by saying, here are the states. There aren't many of them. States where weed or marijuana is still fully illegal. Okay, which states are those, Austin?
Well, I mean, technically, it's illegal in all states, but as far as state laws go, it's fully illegal in South Carolina, Kansas, Wyoming, and Idaho. Okay.
Yeah, and Austin's referencing the fact that it's still
federally classified as a Schedule I substance. So
yeah, they may have tried to move the schedule, but federally it's still illegal.
Scheduling is difficult.
Yeah, but it is still fully illegal. South Carolina, Kansas, Wyoming, and Idaho. This has become more like a spectrum, right? So you've got a lot of states where it's just fully legal, totally okay, anything goes.
Yeah,
California, Massachusetts, all the real liberal ones.
True.
And then you've got a lot of states like in the middle, like Texas, where you have this oil and this THC stuff. So
think
about it
like autism. It's a spectrum. Yeah.
Yes. Are you on the spectrum? Texas is in the middle of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. South Carolina, Kansas, Wyoming, Idaho, they're on the far end of the spectrum where it's still fully illegal. And then everybody else is do what you want. Yeah. It's legal. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's the answer to that one. Next question. How to trademark a name. So this was a popular, and we do this. I was happy to see one that we do. Search and file at USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office. Mm-hmm. That's done through Tease. That's just their online system for filing stuff.
Yeah.
Costs about $250 per class. Now that means there are different classes. So if you've got like some goods in a different class, you pay double the fee. If you've got like a piece of software in class 9 and a t-shirt in class 25, you pay double the fee. All right. Yeah. And then here's the one that really trips up people. If you have a logo and a name, like the Silverman Law Firm has a name and a logo, those are two separate trademarks. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there you'd pay $600 in filing fees for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. That's how you do that, people. All right. Next question. What is an estate sale? People get confused on this.
An estate sale? Are you talking about where you are driving in a neighborhood and you see a sign that says estate sale, and it's when someone has died?
See, here's what people think it is. People think that if I see a sign that says an estate sale or a newspaper, no, people don't do a newspaper, some type of advertisement that says estate sale, they're going to get these amazing deals because somebody died.
Yeah.
That's not what is really going on. Most of the way this works, and we talked about this before, at least in Houston, most of these companies are run by gypsies. And they go around and they're basically collecting assets and hawking goods. And they're just using the term estate sale as like a marketing term. It's like the old going out of business sale. The furniture store was always going out of business to try to draw consumers in. And then we passed a law that said, okay, you can't use going out of business unless you're really going out of business.
Yeah. I know around here, because I've been to a few that like actually say estate sale, and they're in the home of the person who died, actually.
Yeah, but they're usually they typically are, because that's part of the marketing shtick.
Yeah.
They're bringing in assets, they're bringing in personal property from all over the place.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So it's not just that guy's stuff. And usually when you walk in there, the stuff is filled to the brim.
Yeah.
Unless the guy wasn't a hoarder. So it could have been, but so it's an estate. When someone dies and you go through probate and you're settling an estate, and estate is a general term for all the assets the person owned. That's what we do. We settle estates. But usually if it's an executor or personal representative, the person who's in charge of liquidating the estate, most of the valuable personal property is being dispersed out to the family.
Yeah.
They may have some type of garage sale that the executor does, but that's this whole concept of estate sale and all these signs, that's just a marketing thing. Okay?
Yeah. Interesting.
All right. That's all we're doing today.
That's all we're doing today.
That was the last question. That was the last question. With that, it's January 2nd. Austin and I are just tired. I'm tired, okay? It's been a long year, and we got on here to knock out a podcast for our listeners because our listeners count on this show. And Austin, it's January 2nd, and we brought it for the listeners, okay?
We brought something.
We had one last question on defamation, but I'm just skipping it because we've done defamation before.
We have done defamation before.
That brings our show to a close. I've been your host, Phil Silverman. Austin Black has been my co-host. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcast. Nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice, and this has all been for entertainment purposes. If you have a legal question, email us at info@silblawfirm.com. That's info@silblawfirm.com. Tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Everybody have a happy and healthy new year. And we appreciate you. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.